Hello and welcome to Stress Free Living. I'm Ray Samich, and of course, with us today is Ratanjit Sande. Ratanjit, how are you?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. Always great to be with you live, and we are on our Zoom call here today. We also are, of course, on the AM and the FM radio and at wintradio.com. So there's no excuse. If you want to find us, there's plenty of ways that you can be a part of the show, and we welcome all of our listeners and viewers. Ratanjit, you know that we've done over the last couple of weeks a couple of shows about justice, talking about is there justice, can there be justice, what is justice? And one of the concepts that we came up when we were talking about that was winning and losing, how we always want to win, how even in a justice case, when we say we want justice, do we want justice or do we just want to be the winner? And so from there, we talked a little bit in last week's show, and we said maybe we would come back this week and talk a lot more about winning and losing. And you posed an interesting question to me. You said, "Are you losing when you win?" And I thought that would be a great topic today. So let's talk about that because we always want to win. I mean, I think it's something around the world, but certainly Americans want to win. I mean, we always have to be first. We always have to be on top. We have to be best. So how could that be? How could you lose? I mean, there's winning and there's losing. It's black and white. It's salt and pepper. It's winning and losing. How can you be doing both at the same time?
Well, the simplest example of that is that how often you have won an argument and ended up losing. happens
Well,
happens to us all the time.
yeah.
And but see, the thing is, we are 99.999% are trained, habitual in operating in the human body mode. We are basically part in experiencing the input of our five senses. That's all, and we call it a human, in a human being. That is the same thing as animals do. We become a true human when we understand that there is another entity which is within us. When we relate to that, then the winning is less important. See, otherwise, in the human body mode, you're always going to be part in what is in it for me. In all your relationship, we are looking for, he hasn't said, I love you, or she hasn't said, I love you. What has he done for me? What has she done for me? In our gift giving occasions of Christmas or weddings or birthdays, we reciprocate. Oh, he gave me this much gift, I'm going to give you this much. So it's all about um, a trade, so to speak. We are always looking to weigh on a scale, what has he done, what has she done, what am I going to do? So you are always validating what is in it for me. All your decisions are made from that platform. What is in it for me? And in that platform, winning appears to be the game. If I win, I am on the top. And losing, see, in separation, when you get married, you have a spouse. Until you become one, her pain is your pain, her joy is your joy. You do not integrate. You remain in the same mode. I am myself, and she is my spouse, or he is my spouse. So you are constantly observing what they have done for you.
So I agree that there's a lot of selfishness in the world. There's no question about that. And I agree that every person at times is selfish. But I also think that there's a lot of really good people in the world. There's a lot of people that are really trying to be fair and kind and honest and help people. I mean, you run across them all the time. I run across them all the time in my life. I mean, I like to think that, you know, my friends and my family, the people that I associate with, are kind and kind-hearted people that want to do the right things for people. We all know a lot of good people that way. So it's hard for me to accept that all of these good people, including me, are always only thinking about myself. I mean, I know that there's some underlying thought that way that's kind of a human, but I mean, when I make decisions, I try always to say, how does this impact other people? How does this impact my family? How does this impact the people that I'm working with, even if I don't know them and I have no relationship? And I think a lot of people do that. I mean, am I being too, am I not being realistic in terms of the world?
Well, see, Ray, all our selflessness is very selfish. Think about it.
Our selflessness is selfish.
Right.
Okay.
So when I go,
help me understand that.
When I go volunteer, so I am doing that out of guilt often. I am doing that out of enhancing my resume. I am doing that to be observed as a good person. So we are rarely doing things. Very rarely it happens to all of us. We have done things unknown to us that we are doing good, and it ended up helping somebody, and then so on and so forth. But if all the goodness we do, if somebody doesn't give you credit, you're upset. So there is no selflessness in any of the goodness we project. It is all ego driven. And sooner we understand that, the sooner we bring joy in our life, in our soul.
Can we stop there for a minute and talk about this a little bit more?
Sure.
Because I think you touched something here that actually affects a lot of people, and maybe it's worthy of a few more minutes. I can admit that when I do some things that I think are charitable and kind, I am thinking that it puts me on a, it is good for me too. Okay.
You're doing that for selfish reasons.
Yeah, I admit that I feel good about it. I feel good about helping other people, and I do appreciate when they say thank you for doing this or whatever it might be. So I do get that. But I also want to believe that there's a genuine intent there to also help people, to also fulfill my purpose with a role that I think I'm capable of doing, that maybe some other people in that particular role aren't able to do that. So I kind of feel like that's an obligation that I have to do that, because I'm able to help them. And in my case, and everybody can have their own cases of everything that they do well, because I don't do a lot of things well, but I do a couple of things well. And one of them is talking in front of others. I'm able to do that. I'm comfortable doing that. So I'm asked to speak in front of others at events and things like that to help them out. So I feel like it's my obligation and my duty to do that, to help these people. And even if they didn't thank me, I would be happy with that. Is that also selfish? Am I not understanding that? And should I be realizing that? I mean, I'm still going to do those things, but should I not take as much joy in doing them because I have to admit that there's selfishness in there? I'm trying to understand this.
If you went to a incident where there 1,000 people gathered,
Mm-hmm.
and you were a keynote speaker, and you brought, and supposing there is no clapping or very little clapping, and after what you said, and nobody came and said, Ray, you are great, how does it make you feel?
Makes me feel like I didn't do a good job. That's
Yeah,
that's
of
how I
course,
respond. I say, gee, I must have been pretty, I
you
must have
didn't
been very
win.
bad today.
You didn't win. So that
Yeah. Okay.
so ultimately it is, and there are occasions, and in your speech, there could be moments where you spoke through your soul, and you were not looking for anybody to recognize that. You were basically sharing some very personal, intimate things which going to add value. It is like the same thing when a great uh, uh, piano artist plays piano, and at the peak of that artist playing piano, he is lost in the music. He becomes music. But
Mm-hmm.
after he has finished playing piano, if nobody claps, he's not happy, because at the end of that he wants claim, he wants recognition. Whereas the best performance was when he was not even there himself.
Yeah. Okay. I have to admit that that's true. When you're done with whatever you're doing, you do want to have some kind of
Recognition.
satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some kind of
And
acknowledgement.
in today's society, look at the millenniums. Millennials, their parents have awarded them, rewarded them for anything they did. They clapped them for every, even if they failed, they gave them trophies. So now they have come to a mindset that why am I not being recognized? Constant recognition. And they get bored very quickly, although they say, well, I want to make a difference. I want to change the world. But they have no patience. They don't have any tools they have worked for to gain the capacity to make the difference. So ultimately, this is we have parked the next generation in a ego base.
Now, see, you've opened up a whole different line of thought there to talk about, and we've touched on this a little bit in the past. The thought process behind rewarding everybody is fairness and equality and not making people feel bad if they aren't as talented or as gifted in one area or another. So, the whole team, in sports, I was a big coach for all my kids playing, and I treated them all fairly, and I loved them all equally, and I helped all of them. But I taught them, I made them realize that some of you at baseball can play better than others. And just because that's the case on a baseball field doesn't mean that's the case in life. There's probably a whole lot of other things that you can be tremendous at, but baseball may not be one of them. So they understood that they were loved, they were part of the team, but that some of them were going to play more than others, and some of them were going to be the starting pitcher, and some of them are going to sit on the bench for a little bit. And I thought that was the right way of teaching, in that instance. Today, the thought process is everybody is equal and everybody is just as good, and so everybody should get a trophy and everybody should play equally and things like that. What is your thought on that? What is your opinion of those different schools of thought?
Actually, in your case, when you were coaching and telling them, so look, everybody's doesn't have all the talents. You do certain thing good, so the other does something else good. So you are making them understand compromise in life. But if you have told them The purpose of this game which you are playing is not really to win or lose. The purpose of this game is to add the highest value to your team, the highest value to the people who are there gathered to view or see the game so that they get entertained. So if you are part them into that mode of adding the highest value, so see, adding the highest value comes from giving. The direction is from me to others.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the direction of winning is others to me. I am the better person. That is ego driven. Adding the highest value is not about ego, although it could be if you don't understand the true addition of highest value comes from something higher than the ego within you. If it comes from by ego, then you're going to need credit. You're going to need recognition. I added the highest value. I am the best player. Why am I not recognized? Look, I made the team win. So it is not, see, if you are adding the highest value in the team, first of all the players, if they have that mindset, it becomes a true team. And it is very difficult to compete against that team. They are not there to win, they are there to add the highest value, and they will end up winning. So adding the highest value is the path which is, if it is not ego-based. Now, highest value can be ego-based also. Then you are in the worst place.
I think I asked you to come and help me coach some of those times years ago, and they could have used that speech. We would have won more games. Wait a minute, I'm not talking about winning and losing. We would have had more fun. We would have added more value. You know what? We're talking today about adding value, and the big question that says, when we win, do we really lose? Are we losing when we win? And it's a very interesting topic, and we're just scratching the surface on this conversation. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in just a moment and find out more about losing and winning and seeing if we can separate those two. We'll be right back. All right, for our Zoom people, we are on a break. So if you'd like to add any comments or ask some questions, open up your mic.
Give us quick questions. Yes. Basi Saab, go ahead.
You have to unmute yourself, though. You need to unmute yourself. Open up your microphone. We're not hearing you. There we go.
Right, okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sandy Saab has made a beautiful point. And my thinking is, at the end of whatever we are doing, Ray, you had given an example of a speech. If we do not get a feedback, how do we know what we did is actually of any value to the other person, to the listener, to the audience, to the, I guess, whoever we are doing it for? If we think we are doing something good for the world, unless we get a feedback, it is only our thinking and not necessarily true.
Yes.
So unless we get a feedback, how do we know?
Okay, so we can ask that question during the show. So stay tuned for the answer. Good question. Kai, do you have anything real quick? We have another 30 seconds.
Real quick, when you losing to win is more about the process. Like if you didn't truly earn the win or understand what it takes to win in the process of becoming a winner, then the value of winning is diminished. Because if you win all the time, or if you win and the effort wasn't from a principled place in the journey of the process to the win, I'm hoping I'm making sense, I'm trying to say it really fast, then that's how you can lose when you win.
All right, we are back on Stress-Free Living. Ratanjit and Ray Samich with you. During the break, we're talking to some of our Zoom people that are with us here today, and they're asking some really good questions. So we know they're paying attention, and we're going to share those. Ratanjit, can we just start with those? Ask the same questions that they've asked, and they've asked some better ones than I have here today. So the first question was relative to getting feedback. You had said, and maybe I'm paraphrasing, I hope I'm doing it correctly, but when we do something in front of others, or we do some kind of a performance of some sort, we want the acknowledgement at the end. We want the feedback at the end that says, oh, it was good, and I enjoyed it, and you're wonderful. And if we don't get that feedback, because you had said that shouldn't be important to us, if we don't get the feedback, how do we know that we did it properly, that we did it the best that we could, that we're on the right path, and that we can work a little bit harder in that direction to be even better at it? Isn't that feedback essential? Isn't that acknowledgement an important part of anything that we do? And even in the oneness paradigm, isn't that important that we get feedback from others within this oneness?
See, one of the primary incentive of adding the highest value is that you have to constantly make your best better. So when you approach a requisition for a feedback from the standpoint, there are two standpoints. One is feedback so that they tell us that I've done good. That is the ego base. But then there is another feedback which is based on your intensity, your intent to improve, make your best better. That is a different kind of a feedback. That requires honest criticism. That does not require an applaud. So there is a major difference. If you are on the path of continuously adding the highest value, you want a feedback which will allow you to change or correct or make it better, because that is the path you are on. If you are on the path of getting recognized, then the feedback you're looking for is somebody saying, oh, you did a good job. And again, when somebody generally makes a statement, oh, you are fabulous, you are great, you are fantastic, it means nothing until somebody says that you added this point that made sense to me, right? That is the feedback you are looking for.
Well, you are a master, and I think it's worth this little timeout. You're a master at giving compliments, because whenever you have given me a compliment, I always know that you're setting me up for a little constructive criticism immediately afterwards. And you're so good at it. And for a moment I'm beaming, and then now I understand. After 30 years, now I understand. I says, okay, now it's going to come. And you come back and you say, but if you would have done this a little differently, or if you would have said this, or just think about this, what if you would have said this, or what if you would have done this? And doggone it, you are so spot on. But you really are marvelous at that. And I've tried to copy that from you. When I talk with other people, because I've learned from you. You know, you have to put people in the right open-minded mood to hear you. And if you start with criticism, most people turn off real quickly. They close their mind to it, they get defensive, and they put their shields up. But when you start with a compliment that's legitimate, a legitimate, worthwhile praise, then they're open-minded and they're listening, and then you can come in and say, but what if you would have done this? You're so good at that.
The path remains adding the highest value. So supposing you are a supervisor and somebody who is working with your co-worker needs some suggestions, some modifications, so you can go there, excuse me. So in your capacity of being a superior or a supervisor, you can say, hey, you better do this better. So what you have done is, most of the people, although we are talking about not being in the ego mode, that only applies to me. But the whole world is going to be parked in the ego mode. I have to deal with that.
Right.
So when you are approaching anyone, realize, understand they are parked in the ego mode. So they cannot take criticism right away. So how do you add value? You have to correct them. But at the same time, you have to also be observant. What are they doing certain things so beautifully? So you can say, well, look, be specific. Hey, John or Mary, you have done this thing so beautifully. This is the right way to do, because by doing this, this is what has happened. So now you have certified your statement. So wow, so their ego is boosted. At that point, you have gained some credibility. You have established a credit, emotional credit, they call it. Now you can say, but I think you are so talented. God has given you all this. You can do even this better. Now they are going to be able to take that suggestion.
Yep.
But if you are not in part in adding the highest value mode, you will not do that. If you are parked in the ego mode, you will straight away go and criticize them. And that's how the world is operating.
Yeah, it's an attack. Everything is an attack. Unfortunately, it comes across, and it's perceived that way. And then again, our shields go up, and nothing is accomplished. No value is added anywhere.
And then, or when you are part in the ego mode, say, oh, I'm a straightforward man. I'm an honest man. So that is also your ego talking.
Right. All right. The other, very good. The other question that came in, and I hope I can get this thought process right, is that the winning and losing, the whole idea of winning when you lose and losing when you win, it's because it's part of the process. Her thought was that if we don't have the right intent and we're doing the wrong things in order to win, then no wonder we've lost, because we have given up some of our integrity, perhaps some of our righteousness, some of our beliefs, because in order to win, the process hasn't been true. It hasn't been pure. Hopefully I'm catching that right. And so that was her thought. That's why we lose when we win and we win when we lose, because the process hasn't been pure all the way. So even if we win, it's a shallow win at the end, because we know we didn't do it the right way. What's your thought on that?
Well, see, the thought process of winning itself is wrong. There's no winning or losing. You are simply adding the highest value. And when you are adding the highest value, that is not a destination, that is a journey. Means what you did under one circumstance, you did your best intent, what you had available to you, the tools and circumstances. But next time you do the same thing, you better do better, because you have to elevate your best to higher value. And the consequence, world may call it a winning. But you are on the journey of adding the highest value. You are not on the journey of winning and collecting trophies or medals or certificates. That's up to the world to give it to you, and you be graceful, accept them, but that is not ultimately your journey. Your journey is to constantly add the highest value.
See, I know that's right. You're absolutely right. There's no question. But in the world that we live in, it is all about winning and losing. I mean, you can take the sports, and certainly that's the best example of it, because that's where you have a score for every game that's played. and somebody can sit and watch a game for an hour or two or three, or can watch games all weekend, and if they're all ending in a tie, there's no satisfaction there.
Now, hold on. I'm not saying that you end up in tie. There's a mathematical measurement where it is going to call it winning and losing. I'm talking about your mindset as a player. So if you want to not park yourself in winning and losing, you park yourself into a mindset of adding the highest value. The world is going to call a winning and losing because they want entertainment. Remember,
Okay.
you are
Okay.
not going to change the world from their mindset of ego. You have to deal with that. But for your personal highest satisfaction, experiencing the joy within you, and not get caught in this ego mode, which has a roller coaster ride. One day you feel great, one day you're depressed, one day somebody has given you a trophy, oh, it's great. Second day you have. So getting out of the roller coaster ride and getting control of your life and parking yourself into the most joy-filled mode, you have to let go of your ego mode and get parked into adding the highest value mode, regardless whether you are acting as a family member or you are working in a workplace or you are playing a game or you are traveling. No matter under what circumstances you are, your mission and your path remains the same, adding the highest value under most circumstances. So that automatically gives you a feedback, because in adding the highest value, you are giving, you are constantly making things happen.
So that's a big distinction that you've just made, because if I hear you saying it right, if I'm hearing this right, I know you're saying it right, but if I'm hearing it right, we have to park ourselves in a mode where we ignore the score. We ignore the idea of winning or losing. We just have to always do our best to add the highest value, and try to ignore the fact that the world is keeping score.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So
if you see the best player on basketball, say LeBron James, somebody asked him this question. So how do you deal? So he is not parked in what happened in the last shot. That does not depress him that he made a mistake. He is parked in the present. He's basically focused on adding the highest value. So that does not come from constantly scoring. It may come from passing the ball. It may come from so many other things. That's why he is an amazing player. When he goes on a team, he makes the team win, not only by his added highest score. Many times it doesn't score that much because he adds the highest value. But the end result is, the world calls it, because they have to conclude the game. In conclusion, they call it winning and losing, so that they progress. So they have made a game out of the whole thing. So the best team gets a gold medal or a trophy or whatever it is. But the best team consists of the players who play the game with the mindset of adding the highest value.
So I guess that goes back to the question that I asked, that was asked by one of our colleagues here on the Zoom call, is that this kind of validates that it's the process. If the process is that you have added the highest value all the way through, and if you've won in the process, then that's the ultimate good result. But even if you've done everything right and added the highest value, and the scoreboard says you lost, you still won.
Yes.
because you've done everything right with the process and added the highest value. You know, sometimes you can win by, I don't want to call it cheating, because there's cheating too, but sometimes you could win just by kind of taking advantage of a situation and you know, I don't know how to say it, but you know the situation on the court or on the field, and you manipulate it a little bit so that you come out on top and you win. I mean, it is a victory in the column, but at the same time, it's a shallow victory, because you did it not necessarily by adding the highest value, but by taking advantage of the situation.
Now, there's one more very critical point, Ray, that it is impossible to add the highest value
When?
anytime. So you can only have an intent of adding the highest value. At the end of it, you realize that you haven't added the highest value, so you can go higher. So you are on a journey of adding the highest value. So there's a major difference here. The world may call it that you have added the highest value, but after completing let's take a basketball game. After completing that shot or that, your mindset immediately is thinking, how could I have done it better? Because if you want to do it better, obviously what you have done before is not the highest value. So you want to go higher. So your intent when you are doing is to add the highest value with all you have, with all the knowledge you have, with all the power you have. That is where you are headed. But at the end of completing that task, immediate realization will come that you have not added the highest value. And how do you? You will know that this is what you could have done to add the highest value. So you are always on the growth. And as a consequence, you counter the ego, because ego only comes when you declare that I am the best. When you declare I could have added higher value, there is no ego. You are on the path of continuously making your best better.
You know, since we're using that sports analogy, it's interesting too to note that those are long games. You know, whatever the sport is that you like, if you're a fan of that sport, you know that there's an hour or 2 or 3 hours of gameplay. Sometimes you do this to add the highest value. Sometimes you do that. Sometimes you kind of rest for a little bit to get your strength back. Sometimes you're watching and you're not acting, you're strategizing, you're learning what the opposition is doing. Sometimes you're talking to other players and getting communication. And then there's the time when you actually act. There's actually the time that you make your move. And I think that analogy kind of is of life too. That it's, you know, it's not always moving. It's not always moving 100% of the time, because if you do that, never have time to step back and think and analyze and strategize, then you might be moving in the wrong direction all the time. So, you know, it's a pretty fair analogy of life itself, don't you think?
Yes, yes.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back. We'll get some more feedback from our audience here. And I've got a couple more questions, too, that I want to ask you about winning and losing. This is stress-free living. We are trying to take some of the stress out of losing and maybe some of the stress out of winning, too. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Winning is very stressful.
All right. We're open. We got 2 minutes to talk. Who's first? Turn your mic on. There you go.
What I learned from Sandhi's answer is that while giving or receiving a feedback, the best feedback is which points out the positives and also the areas to improve. And if it is only just simply a clap, that may be false feedback. And if it's only criticism, that may also be a false feedback, because the person is doing out of their ego and not truly giving a positive input. So that's wonderful. I learned that. Thank you.
All right. You're most welcome. Thank you, Ratanjit. Kai, anything for us?
Just speak more to the issue of living in the now. I think the power of everything is about living in the now. You know, if you live in the past, it'll consume you. If you live in the future, you don't know it, so it might confuse you. All you have is the moment. And I believe that every moment you have the opportunity that you breathe, in that moment, you can make the best right choice for that moment. Anything else is not going to be the right choice because it's either made out of past indiscretion or something that you don't know in the future. So there's going to be insecurity about what it is. So the power of speaking about the now, whether you're the receiver of the information or the giver of the information, that's how it's going to be processed or delivered properly.
Right.
But I kind of have a spin-off question. So thanks for bringing that up. I kind of have a spin-off question from that we'll ask here in just a couple of minutes. And I've got a couple other ones. Ratanjit, while we have a second, if you do need to clear your throat or whatever, just click on your mute button real quick. You know, in the lower left.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot here because I've been coughing too this morning. Okay, all right, we are back on Stress-Free Living. Boy, I tell you, I wish our radio listeners and our streamers could be part of some of the conversations that we have during these quick breaks. We have some wonderful guests that are speaking with us during these times, giving us good feedback. And Ratanjit, one of them again here shared the idea of living in the now, which I know is something that you and I have talked about all the time. When we live in the past, we're always worried about what happened, which adds no value. When we are projecting in the future, we can't control it anyway. We unnecessarily have worries and fear about the future that probably won't come true anyway. So that's a waste of time. It doesn't add value. Living in the now is the place to do it. But that allowed me to ask this question. If we're only living in the now, and sometimes we have to take a loss, sometimes we have to make a quick decision in the now, in the immediate, that we know maybe isn't the best decision long-term for us. You know, let me just kind of give an example. Let's say that I'm out of work and I need to work at a job because I need to get some money to pay for my debts. And I have an opportunity today to take this job. And it's not a job that I really want. It's not a job that I want to do, but it's a job. And so I will take that job today. And in a way, it's not a good decision. It's not a good long-term decision, but it's the best one that I have. So it's kind of a loss. Am I better off taking the moment? Am I better off seizing the moment, the best that I can get today? Or am I better off sitting back a little while and hoping that tomorrow will bring me a better opportunity?
Ultimately, if the decision comes from your ego, no, I can't take this job. This is below my dignity, or this is below my status and all that. Or if it is guided by adding the highest value, means you need to pay the bills, you need to take care of the family, and no job is bad or good. Even in the job you take, you go there to add the highest value. And if you take the job of cleaning the floor and you added the highest value, brought in amazing creativity, the company may say, oh, gosh, you have changed the paradigm, and they may promote you. There was a local company, I think it was Liberazole, if I'm not mistaken. One of the president of the Liberazole came from the rank of a janitor. He started as a janitor and rose all the way to the president of the company. And the mindset was adding the highest value. No matter what job, position he was given, he completely transformed that position. So
I had a guy in many years ago. I hired him as just a warehouse guy, just to unload trucks. That was his job. And he very quickly learned how to use the forklift, which is it's a pretty big deal to be able to unload these big trucks with that. He learned how to do that within days, and he was doing that. And I kept talking to him and listening. His attitude was so upbeat, and he was always giving ideas. Hey, we should do it this way and change this way. Within about 2 years, he was my number one salesman. He was the sales manager, the number one salesman that we had on the team, and started as a guy just unloading trucks. And so it is amazing. I mean, it's a true story there that happened to me, where he added such value that he made himself so incredibly valuable that he was rewarded with one of the best positions in the company.
You see, adding the highest value, if you understand the fundamentally that you are not a separate entity and you are part of everyone else, because the power which makes you alive is exactly the same power which makes everyone else alive. So in that sense, we are all one. So in oneness, in your human body, your hands are serving you constantly. Do you thank your hands?
No.
Right? And so they function completely because they have no ego. Now imagine if the modern technology installed a chip, a brain chip in each limb. So suddenly your left hand is going to say, why are you, typically when you go shopping and you want to open the key, you do it if you're right-handed, you want to take the key in the right hand and move all the baggage into the left hand. And
Right.
left hand accepts that. But if you have a chip, left hand is going to say, why you are giving me all the baggage? We are both equal. Your human body will stop functioning. And that is what has happened to our society. We are not functioning because we have segregated ourselves as me and you. Whereas if I focus myself as I'm part of you and I am there to add the highest value, without your survival, I cannot survive. Without your progressing, I cannot progress. So in that mindset, I add the highest value and I quit recognition I quit the requirement of recognition.
So that's a great segue, because we're talking about society being messed up. And you talked about earlier about one of the efforts in an effort to try to make it better and more fair and equal and give everybody a pat on the back. The generation, perhaps the millennial generation, and maybe some other ones too, have gone overboard in saying, hey, always praise everybody all the time. Everybody gets participation trophies. And as you acknowledged, what that's really caused is even more ego and even more desperation and being upset when they don't get acknowledged, because they were always given that when they were young, and they go in the real world and they don't get that. So what is the solution? What do we teach our children about the fact that the world is based on winning and losing, and the world is not going to give you participation trophies? There is a winning, okay? And in society, it's recognized as a winning. That's my point. So we can't just tell them it's about adding value only, because they see the winning and the losing being rewarded all around them. So how do we explain this to the youngster?
See, as a leader, if you are a leader of a team, they all expect from the leader recognition, encouragement, guidance. But as a leader, he doesn't get any recognition. They are basically taken for granted. He's a leader, he's the boss. So what we have a mentality of a servant. We are not recognizing the boss living within us. The real boss does not need any recognition. But because we are operating as a servant, we are constantly looking, as an assistant, we are constantly looking for recognition. So the real you does not need recognition. The real you is beyond ego. Your servant are your five senses. Your servant is your brain. Your servant is your human body. What enlivens the human body is your boss, which does not recognize, does not require recognition.
So I don't want to cut you off if you're still saying, I thought you were stopping.
Right.
You know, the servant leader concept, we've talked about that in other shows, servant leader. Are you, I want to paraphrase this properly. So if I'm talking to a 10-year-old who, again, is living in a world where his teachers praise A grades and penalize F grades, and they reward the best athletes during the recess games, they acknowledge that this person scored a touchdown or hit a home run. You know, they get rewarded for things. They see rewards being given. So we need to tell each one of them that there's a leader within them, that the real you is the leader. And yet at the same time, we are here to be servants.
But see, until you begin to lead yourself, you remain as a servant. So now who leads you? Right now, your brain, your five senses lead you. But when the real leader, which is the power within you, begins to lead you, leads your brain, leads your five senses, leads your human body. So you are the boss now. So you don't, all the recognition is required by your five senses, those things. You give them the recognition. But
you make them your servants.
Yeah, you make them your servants. So then your servants are going to do what? Focus on adding the highest value. To who? To the real boss, which is present in everyone. The boss doesn't change. The enlivening force is the boss, which is same present in every single living being. So you basically are serving your boss when you're serving your spouse, you're serving your child, you're serving your co-worker, you're serving your society. You are serving your boss, which is present in the body of different living beings. But ultimately, the body is, you may serve the body because the boss, to serve the boss, you have to also polish the car he's driving or she's driving. So right now you're driving the human body. So you have to feed the human body. You have to serve the human body. But ultimately, by doing that, you are serving the ultimate boss. So then by doing that, you have no winning or losing. You are on the path of adding the highest value.
Ratanjit, thank you so very much. You've made this much clearer to me, and something that I want to share with some youngsters, my grandchildren in my life, because I think right now they're all very confused about winning and losing. And the way you just showed that to me is something that I hope a lot of others will share with the young people as well. Thank you for sharing your love and your wisdom and your thoughts, Ratanjit. And thank you to all of our listeners and our Zoom guests for being with us here today. Remember, folks, we're all playing the same game. Have a great week.
Thank you.